Hello and welcome to this roundtable discussion as part of Restaurant and Bar Design Week. I'm Harry McKinley and I'm going to be asking, are hotels the new front line of restaurant and bar design? Today I'm joined by Ben McCormack, restaurant expert for Telegraph Luxury, Emma Banks, VP of F&B Strategy and Development for Hilton Mia, Joe Littlefair, co-founder Goddard Littlefair, Onur Özgen, Head of Business Development for PARLA. So, before we dive into conversation, let's put this in some context. We can all remember when hotels were places purely to sleep, not to eat or drink. Save the grand dames of the world, the likes of the Savoy or Raffles, hotels were pretty bland in their food and drink offers. And even those luxury staples mentioned before were all about a very traditional, even nostalgic version of fine dining and cocktail sipping. But all that changed with industry disruptors like the Hoxton, Ace Hotels, Mama Shelter, The Standard, hotels that made their public spaces cool, places to hang out, not just for guests but the local community as well, with design playing a crucial role in cultivating a sense of identity and attitude. In tandem, we've seen the high street challenged and the general public seemingly fall out of love with chain restaurants, even as city centre rents rise and less of us are living and working in urban hubs. So, today we're arguably just as likely to grab a bite to eat or a drink at a hotel as we are a standalone independent restaurant or bar. But which, then, is doing it better? And what does it mean for the future of restaurant and bar design? To answer that, I'm going to turn to our speakers. So, I'd like to start by getting the lay of the land. Answering just yes or no, are hotels the new front line of restaurant and bar design? Let's go alphabetically and start with Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben McCormack. I'm the restaurant expert for the luxury section of the Daily Telegraph. And being put on the spot, I'll say yes, but I would qualify that. Yes is my answer.
Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Banks, Vice President of Development and Strategy for Hilton and EMEA. And naturally, I feel very strongly that yes.
No surprises there. Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Littlefair, co-founder and director of Goddard Littlefair. As interior designers in the hospitality world, absolutely, I think hotels are at a forefront and a changing point of restaurant and bar design. I do also think that standalones have a very discerning right to be there and give us some very good competition and things to aim for. So, yes.
And Onur.
Well, I'm Onur Özgen, head of business development for PARLA, which manufactures furniture and joineries for hotels and restaurants. My answer is yes and no. The hotels are definitely getting there, I think, and independent restaurants are having difficulty. But restaurant groups, I think, are still leading the pack.
So, Ben, you write about restaurants for a living. So to put all of this in some context, are we asking this because hotels are getting better and more creative? Or is it that the high street's getting worse and in some way failing? Or is it neither?
I think it's a bit of both. I think hotel design on the F&B front is really getting a lot better. And you can't now open a hotel without having a destination restaurant or bar, and obviously a way to entice non-residents through the lobby is to have something that really creates wow factor the moment you step in. I don't think the high street is failing though. I think one reason hotels are having to up their game is because the quality of restaurant design overall has got so much better over the past few years. And I think obviously hospitality has been through a very, very challenging 18 months to say the least. And that as well, I think, is leading to a real upsurge in creativity, both in terms of design and food and beverage. And I think hotels are just responding to that there is so much more competition now, and the need to stand out in a crowded marketplace is more important than ever.
Emma, of course, you're an expert in this field, not just overseeing design, but responsible for the development of concepts as well within F&B. Do you think there has been a real uptick with hotels? Have they been upping their game in terms of developing more creative designs and more creative concepts?
Okay, well, as I say, I answered yes. And one of the reasons I answered yes was, particularly with the expansion of luxury and also lifestyle. I believe guests are looking for more public spaces in hotels to relax and socially connect. So, if I refer to our Canopy brand, Canopy by Hilton, where we have the Canopy Central, which is designed to fit the local neighbourhood, as I think one of the panelists said before. Or, in hotels, people are looking for great rooftop bars or cool signature restaurants. But in answer to the question and putting it in context, I believe that hotels are responding to both guests on the background of my previous comments, but also owner demands for fantastic F&B spaces and concepts. I think hotel guests now, be they, if they're staying guests, for example, are looking for a great room, shower, safety and cleanliness naturally, Wi-Fi and all the functional things they want for a comfortable sleep and stay in a hotel. But after that, it's the leisure and lifestyle spaces which play right into the heart of the restaurants and bars or lounges, cafes, beach clubs. So I think hotels now, and specifically in Hilton as well, when we're looking at our hotels and programming our F&B spaces, we really want to look to, either reflect the neighbourhood or the narrative and heritage of the property, carry out market research to identify a white space in the area and an opportunity to give guests something unique or something a bit more of an experience rather than what's already there. And, I think hotels are getting really good at programming culinary and the beverage journey. And I think now hotels, and certainly with my team, when we work with our development and architecture teams, we're very, very clear that, and Joe will back us up on this, we want to look at F&B designers. We want to look specifically at branding, music and lighting and the whole package to really make sure that the F&B space comes alive and doesn't just become vanilla and part of the hotel property narrative, but each space reflects the F&B concept that we're trying to design. So I do think hoteliers are working really hard because their F&B can be a standout and a differentiator from other hotels and other brands and other operators, and also creates a halo effect. A great hotel can drive, a great food and beverage proposition in a hotel can drive guests to want to stay there as well. So I think that puts a little bit more context onto why I answered yes initially.
So Joe, then, Emma said you would back her up. What do you think about that? Is it that hotels are upping their game, getting more creative, and the high street is failing slightly, or some other reason? What do you think?
I mean, I think actually there's a sort of world pre-pandemic and post-pandemic as well, but even pre-pandemic, I think brands like Hilton had the awareness that F&B had to evolve and develop. I mean, having been in the industry for over 20 years, I've seen the days of the all-day dining where basically owners and brands felt that there was a room for people to have the all-day, the breakfast experience, and then it would sort of peter off and then become an empty room for the rest of the day. I think we've all come to the realization that that's an empty opportunity. And brands like Hilton were very much perceiving that the changes brought about by disruptors like Hoxton, like Soho House, where F&B drove the animation and the life of the hotel, and actually then created that attraction for people to stay there, that magnetism, that became really appealing. So F&B, it wasn't just seen as then a numbers game of like, okay, well, I can only make this much money on a breakfast. It's actually, I can attract a guest and get a better room rate, and therefore the whole hotel experience is better and more profitable. Yes, I might not make as much money with my F&B, but if I invest in it, the whole hotel is successful. And so I think there is that underlying philosophy is definitely coming through. And from our perspective, we saw localization of restaurants and really speaking to the neighborhood where a hotel is. That's something that we do with our design ethos anyway. The neighborhood, the heritage of the building, what the guests are looking for. Is it a business hotel? Is it a leisure hotel? Is it a resort? Being realistic about what the best F&B is that fits that hotel. And this is why we have our in-house specialists. We call them Epicurean. They have a real sort of, they just follow every trend, every chef, globally, whatever's happening. And and really try and translate those trends into our projects, which is fabulous because it is a complete full-time job just doing that. But it really delivers a successful result for the hotel. If the restaurant fits the hotel and the location in the building, it just all seems to gel. And obviously the food concept is absolutely critical. I don't think anyone wants to go to Istanbul and just have a sort of steak restaurant. They want to feel the authenticity of the local neighborhood in the hotel.
So, Onur, of course, actually based in Istanbul, you're the point at which these hotel groups or independents put their money where their mouth is, because you're where they're ultimately spend on the realization of these schemes. Do you see more of a commitment to design these days from hotels versus standalone independent restaurants on the high street?
I think hotels are definitely getting bolder in terms of design and in terms of standing out. In terms of standalones, I think they are falling behind, but I separate standalones from restaurant groups which own a number of fine dining restaurants. Those guys are, I think, keeping the pace. They're also seeing the trends and they're following them, sometimes leading them. But hotels are definitely taking this route, as Emma and Joe explained.
I want to go back to this idea of all-day dining, which Joe touched upon. Who is still paying 20 quid for a mediocre hotel breakfast in a drab dining room? I'd really like to understand who that person is and ask, are they a dying breed? Emma.
I knew you'd pick on me first for that one. So I think hotels now really appreciate that guests are looking for a variety of offerings at breakfast. So be it a leisurely staycation, relaxed affair, a quick bite at an airport or travel location, or a business breakfast where they might want a bit more efficiency and formality. I think hotels also at breakfast are responding with more increased health options, grab and go, more individual portions, local produce and a la carte. I think they're working on the design of what I don't like calling them, and you just referred to them as all-day dining restaurants, to make it more zoned and atmospheric. And also, now, especially, and again, I go back to luxury and lifestyle and full service, where we're now working very hard with designers such as Joanne and making sure that, because at the end of the day, these restaurants, we have to make sure that they return for the owners and we sweat the asset. So we're now working very hard to create designs that, can transform from, a fairly functional but beautiful restaurant at breakfast with all the cues and lighting around breakfast and the design around breakfast, but that can be transformed and zoned again with atmosphere and design and lighting and music, change of menu, change of uniform, etc., and maybe often a completely different culinary brigade, different front of house. And I'd like to give a few examples of that. If you just look at Conrad St James in London, one of our recent projects, we've taken the restaurant there and created the PEM signature restaurant with Sally Abbey, and you can get an a la carte breakfast and then obviously a very, very beautiful dinner experience in an amazing, beautiful designed restaurant. I look at our Mountain Hub Social, which is a huge, sort of space in our Hilton airport, a very functional hotel, but we've created beautiful zoning so that we can close it off, but also a gourmet restaurant at the back to add a signature dining experience in the evening. Lens and Seleni's, which Goddard Littlefair worked on in Vienna for us. And, in our latest resort, Mango House, that we've just opened up in Mahe in the Seychelles, our 3-meal-a-day restaurant is a beautiful brasserie called Muse. And we're now working, on all the elements that you would put in a signature restaurant and ensuring that they go into these dining spaces. And I think also, to the point, rather than it's not just the area and the space, but you said the mediocre breakfast. I think now, hotels are working incredibly hard on having a good coffee experience and all the elements I spoke around health, a la carte. I'm not saying it's fixed everywhere, but certainly these trends hotels are responding to, and realize that actually, we really do need to give guests a great breakfast experience. And I'm really excited to unveil our new the Hilton Metropole in London, which most of you will know is, a 1,000-bedroom hotel, and we've completely redesigned the big all-day dining restaurant there. And actually, it's a very nice atmosphere in the evening. So I think, more work to be done, but working incredibly hard to make sure that the breakfast experience is great for our guests.
Ben, anyone who follows you on Instagram will know that every other day you're eating a hotel breakfast. Who is that person that's happy to settle, and are they a dying breed?
You mean settle for a poor breakfast?
Yes, or a mediocre breakfast. Well, I think what we all thought of as the traditional hotel breakfast some years ago.
I'm not sure, to be honest, because I think, for me, if I'm traveling somewhere away for work on holiday, I would probably be less inclined to tick the breakfast included option when I was making the booking, because I think particularly if you're in a city centre hotel, it's such a great opportunity to first thing go out and explore the local food scene. So I think for me, as I suppose someone who goes on holiday or travels specifically to go and discover new foods, it has to be such an enticing breakfast. And as Emma and Joe were saying, something with such a strong sense of place to get me to sort of spend that extra 1 or 2 hours in the hotel in the morning. And it really is something that I would research before booking the hotel to see what the breakfast was like, looking at pictures on Google Images, and making sure that that was something that was worth my time, really, when I could be out and about exploring the local food scene. And I think, again, when you sort of check into a hotel and you go to bed that first night, the breakfast is the thing that you're most looking forward to as the first thing about your stay. So it really has to be 100%, I think, or it creates such a sort of early negative impression of the hotel.
So, Joe, Ben mentioned there wanting to be in a space that speaks to a sense of place. Is that where hotels have traditionally missed a trick? The idea that you need to leave the hotel to get a sense of where you're at, and is perhaps that's where hotels are now competing more successfully. So instead of feeling somehow separate from the restaurant and bar landscape of the location, they're now being more integrated.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting. I stayed at the Mondrian Shoreditch last week, and that particular hotel, it's a lifestyle offering. Obviously, it has 4 F&B outlets within one building. And the breakfast experience is reserved only for guests or members of that hotel. And so that's on the rooftop. So as a guest, I am absolutely having breakfast there, because that might be my one opportunity to experience it. And it's a lovely, light, bright space. And, it's a great place that you'd love to meet friends and just have a coffee there. But unfortunately, you can't. You have to sort of make that commitment of staying or becoming a member. So yes, there's an exclusivity around that. And it's a great a la carte breakfast. Not a buffet in sight, which is joy to me as well, because also it's the wastage and sustainability element, which I see. I mean, having travelled recently in Europe for 2 weeks, I've had all manner of breakfasts delivered to me. It was for business, not leisure. So I'm completely with Ben that if it's for leisure, I would certainly be looking to go out and experience some local flavours, something different, and look at those independents. But traveling for business, there is a need for me to go and have a breakfast, early to set me up for the day. And just seeing the vast quantities of sort of lukewarm silver trays with scrambled egg in them, it's just so off-putting. And also just the wastage element, which we know happens after that. And I do hope there's a bit of education that we can bring to guests in the future, that actually quality over quantity is something that they really need to consider with their breakfast. And, we'd love to be designing hotels so that they didn't have to have huge sort of buffet tables that just look so cold when they're not dressed. In fact, in Hilton Dubrovnik, we did the restaurant there. We renovated the whole hotel, and the restaurant has been done finally as the final piece. And that restaurant is set up so it almost feels like a sort of bespoke kitchen, So it's all sort of, when things go away, it's still dressed and it's still cosseting and homely, and it has beautiful accessories and things like that, that it's a kitchen, but equally you could have like a wine tasting event there, or some sort of launch event in that space, and it wouldn't feel out of context. It wouldn't feel like you're waiting for the huge silver drums of food to come out. It's about how we design those spaces as well, which could really enhance the hotels if we get into this mindset of providing quality over quantity. That's somewhere I'd really like to see that go.
So, Onur, then, Joe just touched upon exclusivity. That's one of them. What can hotel restaurants and bars uniquely offer, perhaps in terms of design or guest experience, that independents or standalones cannot?
From my point of view, I think hotels can have the opportunity to offer a more total experience, I think, than a standalone restaurant can. The hotel obviously is a much larger building, and the experience that you have if you're not entering the restaurant completely separately and leaving separately is part of the whole experience that you have for that night out, I believe. And there are also a lot of conveniences depending on which part of the city you are. Sometimes the inner city, it's difficult to park your car, this and that. So such conveniences at the hotel, I think, is definitely something that would make a difference. And also in a hotel, you can have a fantastic restaurant, which is not on the roof, and then you can have your food there, and then you can have a nice coffee on the roof. So all those total experiences, I think, can make a difference.
So budgets are something obviously that affect you highly, Onur. So to be blunt, is it simply that hotels can throw more money at concept development and interior design than often independent or standalone restaurants can?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think anybody is here to throw money anymore. Everyone had a rough patch, and especially hotels, I think, have this exposure globally, so they know what prices are in one part of the world, so they will not be paying more in another part of the world just because that's where they are. I think it's more about it's all about actually the ability to do more with your money than spending more money. And I think in that regard, they can spend now more on the concept development and then make up for it when it comes to production and sourcing it. So the other thing that I think hotels have is they have this extensive network of designers, procurement agencies, suppliers. So they know a lot more about what they can get from where, at what prices, than obviously a standalone restaurant operator can. So these are, I think, advantages that they can sort of save and then invest that into the concept development.
So I think what I'm getting at, Emma, is, and I could see shaking your head whenever Onur was speaking, so I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, is an independent can take an old warehouse space, they can buy a couple of chairs off Etsy and they can make it into something cool. A hotel doesn't necessarily have that luxury, but likewise, they perhaps have more of an ability to spend on ultra luxury design in a way that standalones don't. So to go back to the question, in terms of which is leading in the design fray, do you think it is that hotels have more money to spend on design than independents?
I'd just like to, I do want to touch on that, but I do want to touch on one comment on independence, and just also, in Hilton, certainly in Amir, in my region with my team, we have such, we have so much F&B space in our current portfolio. We have such a healthy pipeline of properties that actually, we are very clear when we're programming our F&B spaces, as I alluded to before. Sometimes we are very clear and work with owners, or actually through our market research, we feel that, my team are all from F&B independent backgrounds like myself, because we do really feel it is a specialist area and specialist skill set, and hotels are recognizing that. But we also sometimes feel that, there is value in bringing one of these independent brands in, or bringing, an upcoming chef, such as we've done in Edinburgh with Dean Banks, working with him, or as we will do in Waldorf Astoria Kuwait, and we're bringing Rocker in. So I think we are very much, we program it for the property, for the owner's requirements, but also the white space and the opportunity and what the market research tells us. So sometimes, as a hotel group and in the F&B space, we feel very, very comfortable and to partner with these standalones when it's right, and it's the right thing for the property, it's the right thing for the guests, and it's the right thing for the owners. So I just wanted to touch that point, that it's definitely, certainly in Hilton and in my portfolio, it's not a them and us. It's, what works for the property and what works for the owner and what works for the guests. But in terms of that, and to answer your question on budget, I would say, it's, yes, hotels are, big dollars to build, but not every property and owner, every property and owner has their own budget and requirements when it comes to the F&B, similarly to standalones. So, and some of the big super brand restaurant groups that the panel have touched on, they spend incredible amounts of money on their restaurant and bars, as we know. But I think what hotel owners are recognizing is, yes, they have big budgets for hotels, but also they are really, really working on bringing in specialist F&B designers for the F&B space, or design houses that can offer not only the hotel design, but the F&B space. So I think it's very much about recognizing that, we want to have good F&B designers for the space to really bring the concept alive. It's true, a lot of hotels will go to the top design houses, but that doesn't mean to say that they're spending more or less on their F&B spaces. I think in terms of F&B spaces, we probably pretty much spend per square meter, certainly in the luxury and lifestyle space, on par with the restaurant groups if we actually went down to capex investment per square meter in the F&B space. And I would be interested to see if Joe and Onur would agree with that.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, the budgets are, it's mythological to think that we just get given some sort of, unlimited budget to go and make something beautiful. It's really not like that. It's very, very driven to, the last penny and the Mondrian, we were absolutely pushed every inch of the way to make every fabric count, every piece of furniture count. And you are really then, as a designer, you have to be really looking at the big picture and thinking, what is going to make the best effect here? Where do I spend my money? And that was a really interesting project where we, just to back up Emma's point about bringing in standalones, Danny Garcia has come in with his Bebo brand, which is a more casual, accessible branch of his F&B offering, and it's right for Shoreditch. It's right for the market. It's great food, but it's not at crazy prices that are unaffordable to the people that are visiting that hotel and that location. And there, yes, there are real Instagram moments. I guess that's another element that we have to contemplate when doing this design for these hotels. But in other parts, we've been really pushed, and but we've used sort of, I won't say tricks, but just sort of methods of making a lot of impression at a really good price point. I mean, we've commissioned an up-and-coming artist to do a mural across the bar, a huge bulkhead sort of mural, which is fabulous, and then it's sort of an echo of that happens in the rooftop, but it's just sort of, using local people as well is a really fantastic way to sort of dovetail the property into the location and sort of give it a story and a narrative and bring it to life. So yeah, we have to be creative, but that's what we are. We're designers.
So Ben, then, Joe talked about Instagram, and there's no dodging it. It is interesting that many of the big standalone F&B operator-driven launches here, where I am in the UK, in recent years have primarily garnered attention thanks to their bold Instagram-friendly interiors. Just look at Big Mama Group and the likes of Circolo Popolare and Ave Mario. So is design now more of a driving force in determining a restaurant's success than previously?
I think so, and I think particularly for that initial success when a restaurant launches, be that in standalone or be that within a hotel, I'm always, someone who has to Instagram daily. I'm always grateful when I sit down and my dish is spotlit and nice. I know it's going to look good, and there are Instagrammable interiors around to make a story as well as a post. I think the danger of all of this is, though, that there's always then a new Instagrammable place to move on to. And when, and I think this is particularly true of hotel restaurants, they launch with a big name chef who's perhaps not based in that city, who's just lent their name to not just lent their name, but overseeing the menu, but may not be there at all. It's perhaps a big name design firm that's been involved to oversee the look of the place. And you sometimes sort of get that feeling of, I could be in New York, I could be in Sydney, I could be in any major global city. And if you recognize that designer's work, it may not be enough to get you to go back, because it all feels a bit not bespoke, particularly perhaps to that location. And I've seen hotel restaurants where the chef who hasn't, as I say, been on the property, it loses its momentum after that initial launch. And you need something to get people coming back, be they residents of the hotel or non-residents who live and work in that city. And design alone can't do that. I think design gets you in for that initial flash of publicity, for influencers wanting, the latest place to put on their Instagram feed. But for longevity, there has to be all sorts of other things. I mean, Joe was just talking about the importance of local people. It's to do with the front of house team, obviously the food, the design. It all adds up to that kind of whole that will get people coming back. So yeah, design is super important for that initial getting people over the threshold, but in itself, I don't think can guarantee longevity.
So I want to go back to Emma on this, because I thought it was really interesting earlier when you said that you do draw a distinction between those big F&B operators and more of the one or two independent restaurants. It does seem that the larger F&B operating groups here in the UK that have had the most, or made the most noise perhaps recently, are those that have very distinctive design. So do you think that design is more of a driving factor in getting people through the door these days?
I concur with Ben. I think in the early stage of a restaurant opening, I think, the opening images and the design create a real wow. And to Ben's point as well, sometimes if you've got a chef partnership with a big name, but I also concur, I think it's very important to have a chef that's going to be there, a chef that's authentic to the location. I mentioned Sally in London, Dean in Edinburgh. We've got Chef Denny, who's the youngest Michelin star chef in Serbia, who's just got a Michelin star after 2 months at our Hilton in Croatia, which just literally opened 2 months ago. He's Serbian, he's cooking gastronomic Croatian food. Sydney Shooter in Amsterdam. So I love that comment about, having chefs that are local in the area, and your paying guests have probably got a very high chance of seeing them, and the food is being cooked by that chef, or certainly overseen. So concur with that. But I think without question, design and being Instagram friendly is as important as ever. But then again, so is atmosphere, a welcoming environment. Environment, is as important as design. Great service, great food, and ultimately a great experience. So I think that design and Instagram element plays into that whole experiential package. It's one element of it, but it's not the most important. So it can be, it can be the wow and the high impact. But I think from a hotel perspective, from food and beverage and our restaurants and bars, I think hotels, if we're going to play into that Instagram and that design element, I think often we're very fortunate that we've got natural Instagram friendly locations. So, we've got cityscape rooftop bars, we've got, beachfront, beautiful resort restaurants, island resorts. And so that adds to the Instagram appeal of some of our restaurants and bars as well. So I think sometimes actually the natural location of where the restaurant and bar and hotels can also add to that. And to that point, I also think hotels are really cluing up to pop-ups, you know, working with chefs or working with brands and creating, you know, working with a champagne house and creating this really, especially in the COVID era when we had to start, you know, spacing people out, and we went, you know, looking at outside spaces or activating redundant car parks or redundant lawns and gardens, you know, working with great brands and suppliers and creating really pop-up interesting Instagrammable spaces is something that hotels recognize, a bit like retailers have been doing in big malls for years, you know, with pop-up brands. So I think, you know, also creating pop-ups, you can create Instagram friendly opportunities for your restaurant and bar and actually change them quite regularly to keep that fresh Instagram appeal. So I think that's something hotels are also kind of cottoning onto as well.
Onur, one of the things that I've heard from designers is that hotels can sometimes be a little bit more risk averse when it comes to design than independents, brand standards, all of that. From your perspective, do you think there's room for hotels to be a little braver, perhaps, when it comes to restaurant and bar design?
I think they have become braver already. Is there room for more? Probably. That's from my perspective, yes, probably yes. I think the best is probably, you know, to have the restaurant be a place where the designer, you know, is sort of allowed to reign freely, in a way, not bound by the framework of the hotel brand as much, which is, I guess, the bigger challenge usually in those terms. And then, of course, hotels, in essence, are investments. So these should all be delivered in a cost-effective and a creative process to fit the hotel's budget. So, you know, reigning freely, more freely at the beginning, and then putting this in a frame that works financially for the hotel investor, I believe is probably a way to make it bolder.
So, Joe, I'm sure you would love to be given a free rein with all of the projects that you work on, but do you think there is some scope for hotel clients to be a little bit braver, perhaps, in the interiors that they push for?
I mean, absolutely. I think that obviously everybody on this panel is very aware of the draw and the animation and the advantages of really successful and adventurous F&B. But there's very much a swathe of owners and investors and brands that perhaps haven't quite advanced to this level or have this understanding. So every project we go on to is individual and unique. And it's very difficult when you're talking to someone on the opposite side who perhaps controls the purse strings that, you know, this isn't the right food concept for this location. And getting those things to sort of gel together. It's you know, fabulous if you get an ideal team of the F&B director from the brand and the owner having that understanding and a really strong sense of what they want to achieve, and it's authentic to the spirit of the hotel. And for me, I think that garners success, long-term success, because, you know, as Ben and Emma were saying, the Instagram moment is really important in the beginning, but, you know, there's nothing worse than seeing a property you've designed being, you know, empty, or maybe the service isn't what you wanted, or, you know, as a designer we sit there and it's the people enjoying the space that gives you the success. That's what we design for, is people. So having those people at the very beginning of the planning that understand and have a common goal and understand our F&B challenges is absolutely critical. I mean, a free reign could be carnage, right? You know, there have to be parameters, and that's great because that gives you structure and it gives you a great problem to solve, and to be creative within that world. So, you know, a free reign but with sort of sensible parameters is great.
I want to stay with you, Joe, because of course there are unique challenges with designing for hotel restaurants and bars, whether it's the bureaucracy sometimes that comes with working with larger hotel groups or those brand standards. What for a designer could make that process less painful?
I think it's a recognition that brand standards perhaps developed in North America maybe don't work in the Middle East or the, you know, the Far East, you know, understanding that you have to speak a global language with F&B design, and that you can't be so rigid, and just sort of, you know, coming on the journey with us. And we always love to investigate the local and sort of see exactly what's happening in that area. So before, you know, our concepts are very gradual. We start very much by a lot of research and a lot of narrative making. Who is the guest? What's the story? What's their experience? Why are they coming to this hotel? Go on that journey with us and sort of have a little bit of flexibility in their thoughts, rather than, well, I know what the menu is going to be. I know how many covers I need to get into this restaurant. I know what the buffet needs to, how many, you know, how big the buffet counter's got to be. You know, let's have a discussion about this, because things do evolve as well. And hopefully, as designers with a specialist interest in F&B, we can help to get a better result for everybody and the asset and the brand, if we can just work together a little bit more flexibly.
So Emma, then, I know that you're nodding along with a lot of what Jo is saying. What do you do in terms of your relationships with designers to make that collaborative process as effective as possible, so that you get an end result that satisfies the designer but also works for Hilton?
I think the first thing I've done and my team do is actually put together a team of hand-built F&B, hand-picked F&B professionals. You know, my team are all ex sort of operators or have worked in the independent sector for many years, and come with those skill sets and that sort of blue sky thinking and that much more entrepreneurial, you know, value engineering, brave spirit. And I think the first thing that we do is we actually, I'm very fortunate to have 3 incredibly talented people on my team. We create world-class, I believe, agency brand standard concept briefs that bring the vision and F&B concept alive, so that the designer, you know, then can really work and create the vision of the restaurants and bars that we've agreed with the owner and with the brands. That you know, we when we present to an owner, we present a food and beverage, you know, program and concept briefs, and we sell a vision to the owner. And it's really important that that's sort of very clear, aspirational and creative, but then the designer can work on that. And I'm very fortunate that on several occasions now, you know, several design houses have come back to me, and I can proudly say this, because it's not my work, it's the work of some of my team, that these are the best briefs that they have ever received. So I think the first thing we can do with designers is give them really, really, really good, fully fleshed out concept briefs, not just, you know, a few images and a mood board, but, you know, the narrative, the history, the vision, the beverage programming, the people, the music, the food programming, you know, and the whole vision behind the concept brief. So I think that's the first thing we do. And then I think the other thing we do, and we work very hard, and, you know, sometimes we're more successful than others, but we work with our development teams and owners, and we try and encourage owners to agree to expert sort of food service consultants, F&B designers, branding agencies, AV and lighting designers. So, you know, we don't always get this, but this is what we aspire for. We also work very hard to make sure that we've got proper pre-opening budgets, you know, great OS&E uniforms, and, you know, so that we can take the whole design and concept through. And another area that my team work incredibly hard and push for in support of getting the design and the brief alive is you know, we recognise that hoteliers, you know, where we may be in F&B design is the finishing off, the oh so important touches around merchandising and bric-a-brac, and, you know, not just leaving it to the operators, who we all know will put some olive jars on there or something, you know. It's making sure that we finish off where, you know, if you look, you know, you mentioned Big Mama before, and I was lucky when I was in London, I got a table at Avenue Marriott. I won't tell you how I did it, but I did, through fair means and foul. And, you know, I mean, if you just look at that level of merchandising and finishing, that's what brings it alive. And I think this is what hotel groups are now realizing, that actually you can't just hand over this beautiful space, but it's got to be dressed, you know, a few plants isn't just going to cut it anymore, or vases, and actually, you know, really make sure it reflects the overall design. So I think, you know, I think certainly in my team, we're working really hard with owners and with the design team to make sure that they have the best chance of bringing that concept alive, by having all the other areas they need, you know. And one thing that we really try and work hard on is, to Ben's point, you know, lighting. we cannot get away from the fact of how important lighting is. And it's become even more important because how that dish or drink arrives in your bar or restaurant and how it is lit and how it shows on Instagram is key. And I go to so many restaurants and bars and a beautiful dish of plate of food, and I take a photo and it's like, oh, I can't post this. It's on some brown table. It's badly lit. My shadow of my phone's all over the food. And you're just like, oh my God, do you not realize how, we need lighting? So I think these are the things that we do as a team to really give the designer the best chance of success and ultimately give the owner the vision we sold to him or her and what they want. And then the guests and everybody's happy, So it doesn't go as easy as that, but that's the aspiration.
It's a good aspiration. We are nearly out of time, so I'd like to ask all of you more broadly a question that I'm asking all of our speakers across the various roundtables, and that is, why do restaurants and bars matter? Let's start with Ben.
I think it goes back to the idea, which is as old as time, of the idea of breaking bread is just such a fundamental part of the human experience. And I think over the past 18 months, what people have missed the most is doing that with other people, either just being surrounded by company or being with friends and family. But I think also restaurants offer nourishment for all of the senses, and this is where design comes in, because it's about what you're looking at as much as what you're eating and how that makes you feel. And then the other fundamental, I think, of restaurants is always going back to the idea of it's the hospitality industry, the idea of to be hospitable and to welcome people and to make people feel welcomed and safe and happy.
Jo.
Oh, I love all of those answers, Ben. and absolutely, I mean, I always believe, if you cook for someone, you're showing them that you love them. And that's the same sort of principle extended into restaurants and bars. And I think we've all missed it hugely over the past year and a half. And we're really glad to be back in a situation here in London where it's, no masks, everyone can see one another and see expressions, meet loved ones, meet friends. And sort of it is that break that we all need sometimes from our sort of own four walls, that respite that it gives us and a chance just to enjoy ourselves. And creating those memories and moments with people that we haven't seen for so long is so crucial. So, yeah.
Onur.
I think my answer is very similar to Jo's. They're where we meet new people, where we catch up with the people we care about, where we make new business, and where we celebrate the old. They're where memories are made. So what is more important?
The great sound bites. And lastly, Emma, then.
Well, I think the pandemic has taught us that we're all social creatures. We want to meet, connect, relax, enjoy great experiences. And, the growth of online and delivery, while stratospheric, and it's continuing to increase and be a trend that's here to stay because of our requirement now to have everything now wherever we are, it's ultimately a poor replacement for the magic and soul of visiting a beautifully designed restaurant and bar with family and friends and colleagues. And, I'll leave it there.
Well, a huge thank you to our speakers, Ben McCormack, Emma Banks, Jo Littlefair, Onur, Özgen. I've been Harry McKinley, and you can find more details on our talks at www.restaurantandbardesignawards.com, as well as on our Instagram page at Restaurant and Bar Design Awards. You can find more from me personally on Instagram at Harry McKinley, from Ben at Mr. Ben McCormack, from Emma at Lady Banks_, and of course at Hilton Hotels. From Onur at PARLA_design, from Jo at Goddard Littlefair. But for now, thanks for listening.